In a 2009 behavioral synchronization study, researchers observed that some individuals began matching speech rhythm, posture, and emotional tone within the first 60 seconds of interaction, far earlier than natural social calibration allows. The anomaly was not whether mirroring occurred, but how quickly the baseline delay disappeared entirely. In the late 1990s, social psychologists studying rapid rapport formation in controlled interviews began documenting a recurring pattern that initially appeared trivial. Subjects would enter a room, meet a stranger, and within minutes begin to display unusual behavioral alignment, matching posture, speech rhythm, even emotional tone with surprising precision. At first, this was classified as simple social adaptation. Humans, after all, are wired for cooperation. But one detail disrupted that assumption. Some individuals did this too quickly, too accurately, without observable delay between perception and imitation. Researchers were no longer looking at friendliness. They were looking at something far more structurally complex in social cognition. Why does it feel so natural when someone reflects your personality back at you almost immediately, yet something in your perception quietly changes the moment you notice it? The psychological mechanism at the center of this behavior is known as behavioral mirroring, a subcomponent of what social psychologists describe as nonverbal synchrony. It has been studied extensively in the work of Robert Cialdini under the principle of liking through similarity, and later expanded in research on automatic mimicry in social cognition. At a surface level, mirroring is harmless. It increases trust, reduces perceived threat, and accelerates social bonding. But this video is not about normal mirroring. It is about temporal distortion in mimicry. When the speed of imitation violates the expected processing time of natural social adaptation. By the end of this analysis, you will recognize the difference between organic alignment and strategic behavioral replication. And more importantly, you will understand why your brain interprets one as connection and the other as something else entirely. In most social interactions, mirroring occurs with delay. A person unconsciously adjusts posture after observing another's stance. Speech patterns subtly converge over time. This delay is critical. It signals emergence, not calculation. However, in observational studies of high social adaptability individuals, researchers found cases where mirroring occurred almost immediately after exposure. Same gestures, same phrasing, same emotional pacing. Not imitation after interpretation, but parallel output after perception. The brain normally requires predictive modeling time before behavioral adjustment. When this window collapses, it suggests pre-activated social templates rather than reactive empathy. To detect this in real life, observe timing. If someone aligns with your communication style within the first few exchanges, before any meaningful personality exposure, you are not seeing familiarity, you are seeing acceleration. And acceleration always implies intent, even if unconscious. This raises a deeper question: what triggers such rapid alignment? That leads to the second layer. Rapid mirroring is not about copying behavior, it is about reducing psychological distance before resistance forms. In persuasion research influenced by Cialdini's principles of influence, similarity reduces critical evaluation. The brain lowers defenses when it detects self-like patterns in others. Some individuals appear to exploit this threshold unintentionally or structurally. They match your humor style, emotional tone, even vocabulary structure before you have established any stable identity projection. This creates a cognitive shortcut. If they are like me, they are safe, but the flaw is obvious. The brain does not verify whether similarity is authentic or constructed. It only detects pattern alignment. Detection tool. If you notice yourself thinking, "This person gets me quickly," pause and check timeline. Did understanding develop, or was it mirrored back to you before understanding was earned? That distinction is the entire mechanism. And yet there is something more unsettling beneath it. When mirroring is too precise and too fast, observers often report a subtle cognitive discomfort. Not fear, not distrust, something closer to recognition without origin. This is sometimes referred to in cognitive science discussions as a violation of expected social latency. The brain anticipates gradual calibration, not instant replication. In experimental settings, participants interacting with high mirroring agents describe them as too smooth, too aligned, or hard to read despite similarity. The paradox is this: the more accurately someone mirrors you too quickly, the less psychologically transparent they become, because predictability without process feels artificial to the human mind. To detect this, observe consistency over time. Authentic similarity evolves. Rapid mirroring remains static. It does not deepen, it only repeats. And this is where interpretation begins to shift, because now the question is no longer how they are mirroring you, it becomes why it is happening at that speed. But here is where it becomes more complex. Not all rapid mirroring is strategic. Some of it is linked to high social sensitivity. Individuals with extreme observational acuity who unconsciously process and reproduce social cues faster than average. In studies of high empathy populations, particularly those with elevated affective resonance, rapid mirroring was sometimes correlated with emotional attunement rather than manipulation. So the same behavior can emerge from two entirely different cognitive origins. One is adaptive empathy, the other is adaptive influence, and externally, they look identical. This is the point where most people make a critical error. They assume behavior reveals intention, but psychology rarely allows that level of simplicity. Trust is not built on truth, it is built on processing ease. When someone mirrors you, your cognitive load decreases. Conversations feel smoother, responses feel anticipated. This is what Kahneman would describe as cognitive fluency. The brain prefers what is easy to process and mistakes that ease for accuracy. In high mirroring interactions, fluency increases artificially. What feels like connection is often reduced cognitive resistance. Detection tool. After interacting with someone who mirrors you heavily, ask a simple question. Did I actually reveal new thoughts in this interaction, or did I mostly hear my own thinking reflected back? If the answer leans toward reflection rather than expansion, you are not in a dialogue, you are in a feedback loop. And feedback loops always distort perception over time, which leads to the deeper structural implication. If human beings can generate trust through replication rather than authenticity, then the boundary between genuine understanding and constructed similarity becomes unstable. And if that boundary is unstable, it means social perception is far more influenced by timing and pattern recognition than by actual personal truth. This leads to an unsettling conclusion. You do not experience people directly, you experience your brain's interpretation of how closely they resemble you in real time. Which means the question is no longer whether others are mirroring you. The question becomes, how easily can your perception be guided by resemblance alone? Now that the mechanism is visible, the detection becomes practical. First tool, delay awareness. Watch the timing of alignment. Authentic social synchronization requires exposure time. Instant alignment is always informationally incomplete. Second tool, depth divergence test. Introduce a topic that requires personal structure, long-term beliefs, not surface opinions. If mirroring collapses or becomes vague, earlier alignment was superficial adaptation. Third tool, asymmetry tracking. Real connection increases behavioral asymmetry over time. People remain themselves while adjusting slightly. Mirroring-heavy interactions often produce symmetry without depth, and symmetry without depth is not understanding, it is repetition disguised as connection. The final insight is simple, but it reframes the entire subject. You are not only observing how people mirror you, you are observing how quickly your mind accepts reflection as identity. Next, we examine the people who do not mirror at all, and why their absence of reflection is often more revealing than imitation itself.